Today's lesson is 3.1H, page 53 through 57 in your math book, chapter 3. So on page 53, there's a reminder of multiplication in an array. So the first one is done for you, but for the second one, so the factors are along the sides, on the outside of that black line. So the factors for the second one are 2 and 3. So the product of the area is how many squares are on the inside of your black line. So in this case, there's 6 squares. So for the second one, the factors are on the outside, so it's 3 and 3. The product or the area is the inside right here. So that's how many squares are on the inside, which is 9. So that should be a review. So the key below to practice using multiplication model. So this represents a 1 unit, x squared, and an x. These are the different shapes, so keep those in mind. So for a 2 by 2, you're going to create 1 unit, 2 units on the one side, and 2 units on the other side. Multiplication is commutative. It does not matter which one you put where. To finish your model, you go and you're going to multiply those. So make a rectangle on the inside. So this part. So for the factors is the outside, 2 and 2. The product or the area is 4 red squares on the inside. For the second factor, we have 4 times 4, so once again, it doesn't matter which one goes where. So I have 4 and 4 on the outside, so my array is gonna, so you finish this, a total of those squares is 16, and the factors are 4 and 4. So let's talk about x and x. So if you remember from the chart, the x looks like this. So we have x on either side. Those are the factors, x and x. So the product or the area, we finish our table. And if you remember from the model, the big square represents an x squared. Because x times x changes the exponent, so it becomes an x squared. So if you'll turn your page to page 54, we're going to do a couple more examples of this. So we're going to build the factors for 3 times the quantity x plus 2, and we're going to draw the area model. Area models need to be a rectangle, so you can't have empty squares. So I'll show you what that looks like. So for instance, the first factor is 3. So if you remember from the other page, 3 is represented by these white squares. X plus 2. So the x part is a long rectangle, and the 2's are just units. They look like that. So to build my array, okay, you want to make a rectangle, so you just continue all your lines. So these all represent an x, and these all represent 1 unit. So to find the factors for this multiplication are 3 and x plus 2. These are on the outsides. The area is what's on this part, the inside. So we're going to have 3 x's and 6 1 units. So the product of the multiplication, 3x plus 6. Area and the product are the same. So for example, number 2, we're going to build the factors for 3 times the quantity 2x plus 1. So once again, we're going to have the 3 units. It doesn't matter which way you go. So I have 2 x's this time and 1 1 unit. These are the factors. So we have 3 and 2x plus 1. The area is the area of your rectangle, so we have to finish our array. So this time, we're going to have 6 x's and 3 1s. So that is the area. Oh, just 3. Okay, the product, 6x plus 3. They're the same. So turn to your next page, page 56. So we're going to do examples 13, 14, and 15 on this page. So we're going to use the array. So we have 6x plus 2. So this is the area. So when you're building the area, you need to make a rectangle. So that means you have to have no empty sides. So there's a 1, and these are all x. And we have x and a 1. You could have gone the other way, just as long as you have a rectangle. So then we can look, this is the area. So now we need to find the dimensions. So this is my dimension. So this is a 1 and a 1. So this factor was a 2. This factor has 3 x's and 1. So this factor is 3x plus 1. So the dimensions are 2, 3x plus 1. So the greatest common factor is a 2. And 6x plus 2 in factored form is 2. And we have 3x plus 1s. So we have 2 of these groups. Let me highlight it. This is one group, 2 groups. So my greatest common factor is 2 groups of 3x plus 1. That is the factored form. Okay, so x plus 4. So once again, there's different ways to do this. So we're going to have an x. Ooh, that's a highlighter. An x. And we need to make a rectangle. So we're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4. So these are all 1 units long. So for the factor on this side is going to be a 1. This top is going to be x, and then we're going to have 4 1s on top. So my dimensions of my rectangle are x plus 4 and 1. The greatest common factor is 1. I have one group of x plus 4. So I have 1, and then x plus 4 is the factored form. Okay, number 15, we have an x squared. So if you remember, that's the big x squared. And we have 3 x's. There's different ways to do this, but this is 1x, 2x, 3x's. So as I'm making my factors, this distance is x. This distance is also x. These distances are 1. So dimensions of my rectangle are x and x plus 3. Greatest common factor, both of those have an x in them. So when I write this in factored form, I have x, and then I have x plus 3 is my groups. So turn your page to page 57. We're going to talk about factoring when you have fractions. So the first one is done for you, so feel free to look back at that example as we do these others. We're going to do number 22. So we have 3 halves x plus 7 halves. So I can really write 3 halves as 1 half times 3. The reason I want 1/2 will become in a second. So 7 over 2 I can write as 1/2 times 7. Okay, I just broke it down. The reason I want to do that, my greatest common factor is 1/2. So when I factor this, it'll be 1/2 times 3x plus 7. For number 22, we have the number 3/5 x minus 6. So I want 6 to be a product of something times 3/5. So something times 3/5 would be 10. 10 times 3. My greatest common factor is 3/5. And then you take the factored form. You take the x minus the 10, and that's your factored form. With decimals, we want to change them to fractions. So 1.6 is 8/5. 2.4 is 12/5. So now I need to find my greatest common factor. So 8/5 is the same as 4/5 times 2. 12/5 is the same thing as 4/5 times 3. So knowing this, when I factor, my greatest common factor is 4/5. I'm left with 2x plus 3. That is my factored form.